You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Friday, October 19th, 2018. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we have been talking about what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ. On Monday, we looked at St. Teresa of Avila and were reminded that we need to do the work of Jesus if we're going to follow him. On Tuesday, we looked at St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. She was the nun who received the visions of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And from those visions, we know that in order to follow Jesus, we need to accept his love and send all of our love back to Jesus in return. Wednesday was a feast day of St. Ignatius of Antioch. He was an early bishop in the church who was martyred in Rome. And from his example, we know that in order to follow Jesus, we need to be willing to give up everything if that is what Jesus demands. Yesterday was the feast day of St. Luke the Evangelist, who authored both the Gospel and the Acts of the Apostle. From him, we learned that in order to be Jesus' follower, we need to talk about him. We need to spread his message and introduce others to the loving Lord Jesus Christ. Now today, we don't have a feast day to talk about, so we are going to talk about you. We have all of these wonderful examples from the saints in the Catholic faith about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. All the saints that we celebrated this week and many more. And yet it comes down to you. You have one life to live, and you have an important decision to make. And that decision is this: will you follow Jesus? Now, before you answer that, I want you to realize something. When you choose to follow Jesus, you choose to allow God to completely transform your life. Now, most of this will be a great and wonderful transformation, but it doesn't come without suffering. As we know, Jesus Christ himself came to this earth. He was fully God and fully man. And yet, in order to accomplish our salvation, he endured tremendous amounts of suffering. Therefore, it is not unusual for the followers of Jesus Christ to also endure suffering for God's greater glory. We can't always see the whole picture, and yet, as followers of Jesus Christ, we know that we need to trust. And so, my friends, that is the choice. Will you be a follower of Jesus? Will you do his work? Will you receive his love? Will you give him everything he demands from you? And will you spread his message? Will you do those things? Now, I know this feels like a lot to decide right now. And the truth is that this is a decision we have to make each and every day. Every morning we wake up, we need to think, will I follow Jesus, or will I follow the selfish desires of my own heart? God gave us the ability to choose. However, we need to choose Jesus in order to find true happiness and live the life that we were created to live. And so, Sprouts, that in a nutshell is your challenge, and it will be your challenge for the rest of your life. But let's start today. Today, in quiet prayer, even for 2 minutes, I want you to think and decide, will you be a follower of Jesus? And will you allow God to come into your life and utterly transform you? That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. finally, Sprouts, today's episode of the Catholic Sprouts podcast was sponsored by a generous listener who doesn't want any recognition, but simply wants to use this time to remind you to always, always trust in the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of our beloved Mother Mary.